So, long-awaited release from a band which has touched many hearts in the metal community. That sounds more like a Justin Bieber fan. Has created a lot of very good music for a lot of good people in the metal community. They really enjoy this band. So this is Deceiver of the Gods by Amon Amarth. No, I'm not going to pronounce it Amon Amarth, no matter how many people badger me. If I were to pronounce it as Amon Amarth on a regular basis, I would probably want to cut my tongue out because that pronunciation is absolutely painful for me to say. I don't really care if other people say it, but I can't say it without it being emotionally stressful. So, I guess it's just already committed to saying it. So, I have the deluxe edition of Amon Amarth's Deceiver of the Gods. Comes in like this interesting case, and then you have the album here. And then you have the Under the Influence EP, which they make songs that are in the style of bands that I guess have influenced some of the older metal bands. It looks like Motorhead, Judas Priest, AC/DC, and Black Sabbath. Also came with a mini poster with each of the 4 logos. So they had like 4 logos with their name in the style of the 4 bands that they were trying to sound like, and it is over there on the wall. Excuse me. So, the poster, I mean. So, anyway. This is a return of Amon Amarth from the 2011 album called Surtur Rising, which is actually, that's the album that got me into them. I got that album, I listened to it quite extensively, and I've really enjoyed it, and I'm still enjoying it, and I really like Twilight of the Thunder God as well, though I believe Twilight of the Thunder God still, it had a couple cliches, that could have been cleaned up by the band. I mean, they've been improving their whole career, trying to improve, but this album is very interesting, and we'll have to talk about different aspects of the album. Not so much in depth as my skillet review, because I felt like I had to talk really, really in depth, like track by track, about everything, because if I felt, the history that I've had with the band, with the band's music, and just, it's to examine the modern rock scene and modern rock bands. It takes a little bit more examining, I think, to come to a final conclusion. But this album we have here is, some of the Amon Amarth fans like it a lot more, and some that are, I think, more discreet in their tastes about some things don't like it as much. And this, I think the album is pretty good, and it's a bit different from the past couple Amon Amarth albums. The song structure is a bit different. It seems to follow more of a, verse, or intro, verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, outro. They kind of vary. Something, they've always done is they've kind of had, like, random melodic sections and solos and stuff like that through their song, rather than following a typical pattern, and they've seemed to kind of reverted to a typical pattern in this album. This album utilizes some basic things in music, and makes them interesting, essentially. Now, I don't think that this is good as Surtur Rising for that reason. In Surtur Rising, they kind of came up with their own ideas, but in this album, they're recycling ideas and trying to make them better, which I think they did a good job of. But if they might have made a better album if they had kind of done what they were doing before and kind of just done their own thing rather than trying to, reuse old ideas. But they did have a couple of new ideas as well, which, when mixed with the improved old ideas, it added a very interesting atmosphere, because they kind of had these interesting operatic vocals. I'm not sure what you call them, like these atmospheric vocals on some of the songs where they were singing, which kind of created an interesting atmosphere. And this album, like Surtur Rising had a couple songs that were based off some of the same ideas, but each song drifted into its own realm nonetheless. And kind of what Amon Amarth did with this album, I think, is that they took the album and they moved it. They took older ideas, kind of improved them and crafted them in a better way, and then brought it into their own realm. Which I think they've done this in some of the past albums as well, but they've kind of added their own layer, if you will. You kind of have all the components we have already, and then they add their own layer, their own style, rather than reusing some older ideas. But in this album, it kind of feels like almost an incomplete Amon Amarth album, since it doesn't have that layer. But I think they just kind of wanted to do something a little bit different this time. Because they've been changing a little bit since, every album. And they wanted to progress their sound a little bit more, kind of modernize their sound that they had from Twilight and Surtur. And I think that for the most part they did a fairly good job at that. So there's a decent amount of creativity on this album, and there's probably places where creativity lacks. There's some places where some of the riffs seem very old and generic, and there's some places where it seems very unique. On this album, I'm kind of getting the feeling that they put most of their effort into the first song, and then kind of did a 75% effort on the rest of the songs. I mean, they crafted good songs, for the most part, but kind of on Twilight of the Thunder God, I feel like they put most of their effort into Twilight of the Thunder God, the title track, and then, kind of didn't do everything else, quite as well. I think for the most part they did a good job on this album, and it's interesting to think and discuss. So I still haven't gotten a chance to see these guys live, and I really hope I do. And for the meantime, I'll be enjoying this album. And in regards to the EP, I think they did a very good job of taking bands that influenced them and making their own versions of that band's song. If you had taken, or if that band had played, these songs, then you probably would think that it was that band's actual song rather than Amon Amarth's, style, or Amon Amarth's song created in their style. They did a very good job at that, and I think they have really good instincts with that. Some of it's a little bit too for me, but that's just me personally. But anyway, I really like this album. In regards of bass and drums, I think the bass kind of drifts off into his own realm sometimes, but it's kind of restricted to the guitar sometimes. Not always, but bass could be a little bit better, and the drums are fairly good. It's about as good as most of the other Amon Amarth albums, so I don't really have much to complain about there. But anyway, that's pretty much all I have to say about this album, and I thought it was a very interesting and good album. Cover Killer Nation kind of noticed that the lack of their layer of style and creativity was there, and he didn't like this album that much for that reason. And I mean, that's fine. That's his opinion, but I'm just expressing my thoughts. If you're a long-time devoted fan to Amon Amarth, you might like this album. If you're more restrictive and discreet about your tastes, you might not. My suggestion is sample the whole album before you buy it, because you may or may not like it. You may have wasted your money, and you may have to go sell the CD, or if you had it on iTunes, you're just screwed. So, check it out on Spotify or YouTube or, whatever streaming service you use before you buy it. So, just trust your instincts with this one. Anyways, have a fantastic day. Keep it metal. I think this means metal. Okay, enough idiocy. I'll see you guys later. Have a good day.